Nobody in the racing world expected this. One moment, the motorsport community was settling into its usual off-season rhythm, and the next, a storm of breaking reports sent fans into full speculation mode. Sergio Perez, long associated with the Red Bull powerhouse, had suddenly been spotted participating in an unusual and confidential test session that involved two names nobody thought they would hear in the same breath as his: Ferrari and Cadillac. The moment this news surfaced, social media exploded. People questioned if this was a sign of Perez preparing an escape route, or if it was simply a technical collaboration. The truth was far more dramatic. What made this situation more electrifying was the secrecy surrounding it. Witnesses described the atmosphere as tense, almost like a high-stakes audition. Engineers were moving quickly, making adjustments, whispering among themselves as Perez strapped in with a calm seriousness that hinted he knew the gravity of the moment. The cameras were limited, the environment controlled, and even insiders claimed they had never seen such tight security for what was labeled as a simple performance evaluation. By the time the engines fired up, everyone present knew that something important was unfolding. Perez, with his trademark focus, took off into the circuit, leaving behind a trail of questions. Whatever was happening here was not random. It was the start of a story that could reshape his future, and possibly the entire landscape of motorsport. For years, Sergio Perez has been a symbol of resilience. A driver who clawed his way through the peaks and valleys of Formula One. But behind the podium, smiles and highlight reels. Cracks were forming. His performances in the past seasons were heavily scrutinized, and every dip in form amplified the pressure on his shoulders. Inside the Red Bull garage, the expectations were relentless. The comparison to his teammate was constant, and every mistake turned into a headline. Perez knew he needed clarity about his future, not just emotionally but professionally. This test with Ferrari and Cadillac came at a time when he was searching for answers. For Ferrari, the interest was strategic. They were exploring potential backup options, especially as internal discussions hinted at uncertainty in their driver lineup. Cadillac, on the other hand, was pushing aggressively to prove that its ambitions extended far beyond hype. They needed a proven driver who could evaluate their machinery with honesty and experience. And Perez was the perfect fit. However, Perez's decision to step into this test was deeper than career strategy. It was personal. He felt the clock ticking. He sensed how quickly the sport could turn on its heroes, and he didn't want to be caught unprepared. This test represented an escape hatch, a fresh opportunity, and above all, a moment where he could rediscover the confidence that had slowly been chipped away. He wasn't just testing a car, he was testing his future. When the sun rose over the circuit, the atmosphere felt strangely heavy, almost like the calm before a storm. Engineers arrived early, setting up equipment with unusual caution. Ferrari personnel worked on one side of the garage, Cadillac staff on the other, each group protective of their own data and tools. The silence between them spoke volumes. This was not a relaxed evaluation. This was a showdown of ambitions, and Sergio Perez was right in the center of it. Perez stepped into the garage wearing a neutral expression, but those close to him could see the intensity behind his eyes. He knew this session carried serious weight. The whispers in the paddock, the rumors about his contract, the chatter about Red Bull exploring alternatives, all of it lingered in the background. Today, he had to prove something, not to fans or the media, but to himself. As the seat was adjusted and telemetry systems came online, both teams watched him closely. Every gesture, every comment, every reaction from Perez mattered. Ferrari wanted to see if he could bring controlled aggression to their setup. Cadillac wanted feedback that could help them leap forward in their motorsport project. For Perez, it felt like he was auditioning for two futures at once. When the visor finally went down, the garage fell quiet. Perez inhaled deeply, steadying himself. Today was not only a test of machinery, it was a test of his mindset. And everyone at the track sensed that the laps he was about to complete could ignite a chain reaction across the paddock. The moment Perez rolled out of the pit lane, the sound of the engine echoed across the circuit, and everyone watching realized this was not going to be an ordinary run. His first flying lap came with a level of precision that surprised even the engineers. He looked more relaxed than he had in months, guiding the car through corners with a smoothness that hinted at rediscovered confidence. Ferrari staff exchanged glances, quietly impressed. Cadillac engineers watched the data screens closely, almost leaning in as numbers climbed higher than expected. Then something unexpected happened. On his fourth lap, Perez pushed harder, and the car responded beautifully. Grip levels were solid, braking zones felt sharp, and the balance through high-speed sections looked nearly perfect. The performance was strong enough that a few insiders whispered that he was already matching times set by their official drivers. Cadillac staff were even more stunned. Their project had never been tested with a driver of Perez's maturity in racecraft, and now they were seeing potential they had not imagined. But the real shock came when Perez returned to the garage. Instead of the usual brief comments, he took off his gloves, sat down with both teams, and began breaking down the car behavior with clarity and confidence. He was detailed, calm, and brutally honest. It was a version of Perez that had been missing. Lately, the version that teams used to fight over. In that moment, the teams realized they were not testing him. He was testing them. Just when everyone thought the session was going smoothly, the unexpected happened. Perez was midway through another strong run when the car twitched violently. At the exit of a fast corner, trackside staff flinched as the Rio suddenly stepped out. For a moment, it looked like a full spin was coming. Perez reacted instantly. correcting the slide with precise steering, but the radio crackled with urgency. He reported a strange vibration and a loss of stability that had not been there before. Inside the garage, engineers jumped into action. Ferrari technicians began scanning data, their expressions tightening as they detected abnormal fluctuations in the rear suspension. Cadillac staff checked their systems as well, trying to determine if the issue could be linked to a calibration problem. Tension filled the air. Nobody wanted their machinery to suffer a public failure during such a high-profile test, especially with rumors already swirling about Perez's future. When Perez pulled into the garage, the mood was intense. He climbed out of the cockpit with a calm appearance, but the adrenaline was visible in his eyes. He explained exactly what he felt, describing the cornering load change, the sudden vibration, and the moment the car nearly broke loose. His clear breakdown impressed both teams, but the situation remained serious. As mechanics crowded around the car, removing bodywork and inspecting components, whispers began circulating. Some believed the fault revealed a weakness in the setup. Others suspected Cadillac's hybrid system integration may have been the cause. Whatever the truth was, one thing became clear. This incident had turned an ordinary test day into a battle of reputations, and Perez was now the only one who could steady the storm around him. After the scare on track, the garage was a battlefield of urgency. Ferrari engineers focused on the mechanical components, checking every bolt and bracket linked to the rear assembly. Cadillac's hybrid specialists hovered over laptops, searching for any electronic miscommunication that might have triggered the instability. Both sides wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. The longer the car sat silent, the heavier the pressure became. This was no longer just a test. It was a public examination of their engineering pride. Perez stood quietly at first, watching the teams move. But when disagreements began forming over the root cause, he stepped forward and took control of the situation. He gathered both groups around the telemetry screen and walked them through the sequence of events corner by corner. His explanation was calm but firm. He highlighted the moment the car lost balance, the lingering vibration afterward, and the change in wheel load that happened milliseconds before the slide. His breakdown was so clear that the room fell almost silent. With this input, the teams finally narrowed the issue. It appeared to be a combination problem, a mechanical weakness amplified by an unexpected software spike in torque distribution. The fix required cooperation between both sides, something that had been tense earlier, but now felt necessary. As the crew worked together, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to collaboration. When the car was ready again, all eyes returned to Perez. His resolve had not wavered. He climbed in, tightened his belts, and with a determined nod, headed back onto the circuit. The pressure on his shoulders was massive, but something about him felt different. He was not driving for a seat today. He was driving to remind the paddock who he truly was. When Perez returned to the track after the fix, tension hung thick in the air. Every eye followed his car as he attacked the corners with precision and confidence, leaving the earlier scare behind. Lap times dropped steadily, the car felt balanced, and performance soared. Engineers from Ferrari and Cadillac watched in awe as Perez extracted speed and stability that revealed the machine's true potential. His consistency rivaled regular drivers, and his feedback improved the car more in a single day than months of testing. When he finally returned to the pits, the garage buzzed with quiet applause and approving nods. Perez stepped out calm, but everyone knew these laps had transformed a simple test into a statement. He was still a force, still capable of brilliance when it mattered most.